Okay. All right. Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to get started, Mom?
Just say there's more people coming. But they can,
Okay. All right. Hello, friends and family. I'm so appreciative of all of you, and I really thank you for coming today. It's a very sad occasion, but oftentimes in moments like this, the only good thing to come out of it is that you get to be with all your loved ones at the same time, remembering someone that you love. I'm Megan, Kathleen's daughter, and if you don't know me yet, and my husband Craig and our son James, he was helping to do the water and such coming in. It's hard to believe that we only knew Lou for 2.5 years. He melded instantly into our family, and he became a chosen family member for us. This doesn't mean that his first family was any less important at all, but I think we've all experienced that at some point in our life where you become really close to other people and they just are an addition to your genetic family. I feel like he was that for us, and I think we were that for him too. He used to say the same thing each time that we saw him, which was, "I'm still around, eh? Can you believe it?" His voice was thick with joy and a lot of disbelief and a smidge of sarcasm. I know, not Lou, right? Never any sarcasm. He was amazed that he found my mom and that they were lucky enough to be able to have a second chance at love in their long lives. He took really good care of my mom physically by helping her, by changing the misters and making her breakfast and planting the garden. And emotionally, he was there with heaps and heaps of love that he bestowed upon her. She got a bouquet of roses every single week that they were together. So I actually made this for her. And this was the last set of roses that he sent. So I put them into resin so she could have them forever. They spent almost every day of the last 2.5 years together. Every doctor's appointment and grocery store trip and every dinner at the Voyager, it was always together. They balance each other out in a really wonderful way that I think only soulmates can. And I can definitely say for sure that they were soulmates. I think that you have more than one in this life, and sometimes people don't even get to meet one. But for Lou and my mom, they were extraordinarily lucky to have met another kindred soul. Lou also entered our lives at a time when our son James was lacking grandfatherly figures. My dad passed away when James was only 1, and Craig's father passed away in 2018. So Lou was able to take on the role with gusto, and he would take him to the base and show him the planes, and he showered him with gifts and games. He would play basketball with him, and most important, he was his partner in crime, and they would work together as a team to convince my mom to go get ice cream at Dairy Queen. His absence will be hard for James. Lou was a man who was full of life stories and infinite amounts of advice. He would slowly stroll around the yard with Craig, and they would discuss their different ideas about our trees and plants and grass. And his advice always started with, "So here's what you do. Oh, all you need is some good tapa. And I know just the type to get. And you got to go to Lowe's and you got to talk to Frank and you tell him you know me and he'll get you the right tapa." So we got the topper, and it does make a difference, definitely making our trees bigger and more beautiful. Every single time we had a question about anything like doctors, plants, termites, grass, life, he had an answer, and he would explain it with gusto and with a story. I loved his stories, and being a storyteller myself, I often wondered if he was full of it. I couldn't imagine that any man had lived this incredible life prior to knowing us. So many different experiences, so many different friendships, and so many different careers. But over the years, the pieces came together, and I came to see that that was actually who he was. And my favorite parts of the stories were the huge, incredible belly laughs that would always come with them. His life was beautiful and full and tragic and difficult and very real. And I loved getting to know him from his piecework and the stories and the puzzle that made his life. One of our last experiences as a family was sitting down to work on a puzzle. He opened it up and told us some news stories at night that I hadn't heard before. And I remember thinking it was a precious moment that he was sharing these things with us. And I'm really glad that we got that. And I cannot possibly explain how much I appreciated his love of Sandra and how he took such good care of her until the very end. I wasn't sure how I felt when he and my mom met, knowing that Sandra was still alive. But I've come to know that Sandra was the person who probably would have been very happy that he got another chance in this life to love someone so completely. My mother also knew about Sandra from the beginning, and she loved her too. And she helped Lou through his pain when she passed. And I love that when Lou was passing over, that Sandra was certainly there with her hands outstretched. And I imagine there were so many people there waiting for him. And I think it makes the transition easier for him and all of us too, to know that he's cared for. I will feel honored that I was with Lou as he was passing from this life. I appreciate his doctors and nurses for letting us break and bend the rules for those last hours, especially because I know because of COVID, so many people didn't have this with their loved ones. So I've never experienced those moments before someone passes. It's always been after they have died. But I feel in this case, I had the honor of saying goodbye to someone from one soul to another. And in the Buddhist tradition, a person is just discarding this body and their soul is moving on. And in the last days, you could see that he was ready to discard his body and move on. We were not prepared. We didn't want that yet, but he was ready. And the universe has its own time. And so Lou was meant to move on. I'm so appreciative to be able to celebrate with all of you who have loved him for so many years. And I feel robbed because it was a short period of time that we got to spend with him. But we all know that he was larger than life. So those years were very full, and every moment was filled with his voice and his laughter and his advice and his sarcasm. And we're a super sarcastic family, so we just love that. We love Lou and we'll always love him, and we'll always consider him a part of our chosen family. We know that we'll see him again. Until then, we're gonna go get some more topper and put it on our trees and watch them grow to beautiful heights, and know that he taught us this. And like so many other things, this is one of his legacies. So thank you, Lou, for being a part of our lives. It is richer and also emptier now. Your space is impossible to fill, but I think that's a symbol of a full and loving human life. Thank you all for being here and letting me share my joy and my sorrow with all of you. Let us honor Lou and say farewell from one soul to another by spending a few moments of silence wishing him well on this journey, please. And now I'd like to introduce my mom, Kathleen. She'll be doing my next speaker.
She's beautiful, isn't she? And we were so fortunate to have Lou in our lives, and we embraced him. I need to talk louder. Okay. We embraced him, and as he embraced all of you. So there are different phases of family, aren't there? So we have people representing the adopted family, and we have people representing the birth family. And Bonnie, Lou's niece, is going to talk more about that. So she'll talk to you about that when it's her turn. And here, as you see by the program, here is going to end it. But my sisters and I lost our sister Pat, and her husband Tom is here with his beautiful wife Barbara. Barbara's here. Okay, Barbara and Tom. I'm not louder than just to microphone. So I want to read a few things. I want to start with one of my sister's poems, because it seems very fitting for what we're doing today. So here it is. I hope as I go through life, I touch in some way those I meet. I may not know them long, I may not know them well, but if I can leave a small part of myself with them, I hope to leave them love. For love is the best of oneself, and to love someone is to touch them most of all. And Patty wrote these poems a long time ago, but they are so meaningful, I think, the words today. Because as Megan started this, and all you that are sitting here, Lou loved wholeheartedly, you know, with his whole heart and whole soul. He could be a pain in the neck. You can ask his sister Ruthie about that later on. But there was a part of him that was just that, like Megan said, embraced our family. And so I think you know the story of what happened, so I'm not going to get into that. If you need to know more, I'll tell you that later. But we really thought this was going to be perfect and going on our way. We were planning on, Sandra died on April the 24th and August 24th, excuse me. And we were planning on taking her ashes back because of COVID. We weren't able to. Harriet and I will be taking both Lou and Sandra back to Boston to be with Lou's parents and Sandra's adopted parents. As I reflect on my time with him, it was too short, but it was so beautiful and intense that I just feel blessed and appreciate every single moment. And the songs I hear, and Craig's gonna play some music later. Some of those were some of Lou's songs that he'd like to hear. And the other things that happened with him. And today's celebration is Irish and Jewish. And Lou was always told that his birth father was Irish. We're not sure, could have been Italian, but we decided to do Irish and Jewish food. Okay, so with the help of Harriet and Bonnie, we got that all together. And when we get done and after we hear from everybody, then Megan will be inviting you to go to the buffet and get some food, and we'll take the chairs and put the tables out, and hopefully the sun will go down a little bit because we're gonna need that. But my heart with Lou was, well, one of the first times I met him, you know that we lived like 3 doors away. And he came down to the wash where I was walking my dog Angel. And he said, I'm Lou Sacklad. I said, okay. And he says, let me tell you about myself. I said, all right. He goes, I'm Irish. Okay. I'm Jewish. Okay. I own a company called Halo. So I used to call him my pot dealer. He didn't like that. With medical marijuana. And he was still working then. So he was still a federal marshal at the time. So I always called him my Irish Jewish pothead cop. Because that was part of him. And we have some of his memorabilia up here, and he just fell over. This is him. I think that's when he was at Peoria. I think that's when he was at that. When we're telling some stories, and we really want them because who was a better storyteller than Lou? You'll get to hear more from some of the people we hope. Some of the original birth family. Okay. And I think Bonnie's going to tell you more about that. But Lou was in his 50s, I think, wasn't he, when he put all you guys together? Right? Yeah. So his sister Sandy is on here. She lives back in Massachusetts. And I'm going to let Bonnie introduce everybody else when it's her turn. I'm not going to talk a long time because I'm having a little bit of a hard time doing it. But what I'd like to do is read you a passage from the prophet. I love to read this one anytime there's a service or something. So here it is. For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind and melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth claims your limbs, then you shall truly dance. So that's for my beloved Lou. I have one more poem from my sister. And then Bonnie, I hope you're ready to take a breath. So this is Patricia Berry Turf, and this was written, Patty passed in 1992, so it's been quite a while. It's nice to know that in this mobile world of ours, as we move from place to place, we leave behind a bit of ourselves in each friendship we make. For in making friendships, we make a bond. one that transcends time and place, and lasting friendships, like vintage wines, grow better day by day. And that's from Patricia Berry Turek. So Bonnie. This is Bonnie DiCarlo, one of Lou's birth family nieces. Is that the best way to say it?
Sure.
Oh my God, Bonnie, I'd never recognized you.
Hello, Aunt Sandy.
It's been so many years. Oh my God, you're beautiful.
You. For those of you who do not know me, I am Bonnie Finkel DiCarlo. I am Lou's niece from his older brother, Raymond Finkel. I am family. Some of you may already be familiar with the family story. For those who are not, I will give you a brief summary. While working for the PD in Boston and with full knowledge that he was adopted, Lou had an assistant offer her time to reach out his birth mother and any possible siblings he may have. During this research, Lou's assistant didn't find that Lou had a sibling or two. He actually had 7. Lou had an entire family. Lou then took it upon himself to track down and contact each one. Some who are here today, Ruthie and Carl. One that cannot be here today but is on Zoom, Arlene, that's Sandy, and some that passed before we got to meet them, Arthur and Bernice. There is a final one of Sarah that we also did not get to meet. My father, Raymond, who is no longer with us, was one of the last that Lou found, but he established a strong relationship with Lou in the time they did spend together. After only one afternoon conversation with my mother and father and Lou and his wife, Sandra, we knew this unfamiliar man named Lou was our family. Being raised with the idea that family was one of the most important things a person can have, my sister Harriet, my brother Chucky, who has passed, and I realized a quick and loving relationship. We were there for each other and always would be. That is family. Uncle Lou was always just a phone call away to discuss and or help with anything, anytime. Just last month, my son and Andrew and I came down to see Uncle Lou, and they were discussing a business venture my son was looking into. And in true Uncle Lou fashion, he was like, I'll be there for you with all the knowledge and have you provide the brawn. Again, that is family. Uncle Lou may have had a tough exterior, but inside he had a great big heart. And when he passed, he knew he had a family that loved him because he reached out and found his family. There is a book, I have 2 copies that kind of give the history of how Uncle Lou found everybody, kind of letters that went back and forth to the brothers and sisters. You're more than welcome to look through it. There are some pictures. Like I said, there are 2 copies. I will leave them out for everybody to kind of peruse during the day. That would go to Harriet, my sister, the one who knows Yiddish.
So I'm tasked with something called the Mourner's Kaddish. We were all born from a Jewish womb. We were all raised as Jews. So you need to understand that we are Jews. My uncle, as you said, thought all the time, his entire life he was Italian. No, yeah, he was Irish. And I said, no, you're Italian. No, I'm not. Guess what?
What the hell are we?
We come very naturally from one of the lost tribes of Judah called the Where the Fuck Are We tribe. So what I'm going to ask all of you to do, because I do have some remarks and that follows that, is at the end of somebody's life in the Jewish religion, we do something called the Kaddish, and that is the prayer. It's the blessing. It's more than a prayer. It's a blessing over being mourners. It doesn't talk about death, which is really unusual. And I need to thank Megan for putting it here so that everybody could read it. And it's done in unison. It's normally done by a minyan. In other words, there has to be 10 members that would get together to say the Kaddish. And I can tell you that we made frantic phone calls, and I know that my Aunt Ruthie did too, on making sure that Kaddish was said for my uncle for a solid year, because that's what we do. So we have a couple of synagogues throughout Boston and Tucson and a couple of other places that are saying Kaddish for my uncle. So what I'd really like all of you to do is to stand up and say it with me, please. Glorified and sanctified be God's great name throughout the world, which he has created according to his will. May he establish his kingdom in your lifetime and during your days, and within the life of the entire house of Israel, speedily and soon, and say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he beyond all the blessings and hymns, praises and contemplations that are ever spoken in the world, and say, Amen.
Amen.
May there be abundant peace from the heaven and light for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen.
Amen.
He who creates peace in his celestial heights, may he create peace for us and all for Israel, and say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So do we go right into the remarks from the loved one?
Well, you could start.
I can do that.
Yeah, you have a few. Gary and I became friends.
I realized during this whole process that I'm actually the oldest of all of the nieces and nephews. That started to weigh on me heavily. There's not a lot of age difference between my uncle Butchie, I'm Carl, and myself. And we recognized that the other night. We said, oh my God, there's the same amount of years between him and I as there are between my sister Bonnie and I. So it's kind of a little spooky on what's going on. But I got to tell you a little bit about my Uncle Lou. We were at Aunt Sandy's house in Boston, him and I, and Uncle Lou says to me, we got to go with her son, and we got to go see his new house. And we no sooner got there, and I said, well, let's bring Aunt Sandy. He says, let's not. Well, why wouldn't we? And he said, just come on, Harriet, just move it. Come on. Okay, we get in the car. We go maybe a mile and a half.
2.2 miles.
There we go. To his new home that he had bought, and it was a duplex, and he was so proud to show it to us. But what they couldn't wait to do, and what I didn't know, was go up to the top floor, open up the balcony, and sit there and smoke dope. And you're going, here I am with my uncle, who's a former cop, former federal marshal, and 75 plus years of age, and he's smoking joints. And I'm like, this is my uncle. This is what I knew from my uncle. When our mother was dying of cancer 24 years ago, marijuana wasn't legal in the state of Arizona for medical issues. And I was calling my uncle and said it was killing me because she was in such pain, and she couldn't eat, she couldn't hold anything down, and they tried everything from morphine to methadone. They had him on methadone, everything. And the doctor kept saying to us, if you could get her to eat or smoke marijuana, she'd be able to be not in as much pain and be able to hold something down. That's going back 24 years ago when it didn't exist. So I called my uncle, Uncle Lou. And the next thing I know, 2 Glendale police officers are knocking at my door. And the first thing they say to me, I need to see some ID. Okay, I show them my ID. I went and got it, and they said, here. And they handed me a baggie of marijuana that disappeared somehow or another from somebody else's stash that was there to help my mother. That's how much. Huh?
You'd say it was appropriate.
Yeah, you would say appropriate. My house has an atrium in the middle of it. And he used to sit there and look at my atrium. He said, that's the perfect place to grow marijuana. But my Uncle Lou was more than that. He was somebody that I could call, talk to, read. 2 things I remember most. I felt so lucky and so blessed that the day my Aunt Sandy died, because I live in Phoenix, y'all, I decided to come down to Tucson and spend the night with my Uncle Lou and Kathleen. Go out for dinner, do whatever we were going to do. Sit at the bar. Another story. And,
Red wine.
yeah. And I felt so blessed that when the phone call that Lou got from the nursing facility, the memory care facility, I was there with him when he got the call. So God put me there for some reason, and I don't know why, but God put me there to make sure that he was okay and to help and to figure out what's next. What do we do? And you're right, COVID's ruined everything. The plan was to take her back to and put her ashes between her parents, and somehow or another we'll make this all happen. We'll do what we need to do. The other thing about my uncle, how close I was to my uncle. 4 years ago, April, I was in Boston with my uncle at my aunt's house. And I was there for,
I remember.
you remember? I was there for a conference and, but we went in about a week and a half early so I could visit my kids and grandchildren and some girlfriends and then go to a conference. And I had already been a widow for 16 years. So it was like, okay, we're just gonna go and we're gonna eat fried clams with the bellies. My uncle and I are gonna drink good scotch. So we were doing that and I'm on my way to the conference and I got a phone call on my way to the conference and was my husband, Steve, who wasn't my husband at the time, that talked to me on the telephone and asked me to marry him. So the first person I told that I was gonna get married again, that I accepted, was my Uncle Lou. We celebrated with a bottle of scotch. That was in the airport. And we had a steward, a male stewardess in the airplane who was so excited for us, he kept sending back those little bottles of scotch. So, yeah, I don't know how we got off the plane. But he was so happy for us and for me and for the family. When Andrew got accepted to law school to college, he got in his truck and drove up here to give Andrew a card to say, go to college and do what you want to do. He was that part of the family. And I think the thing that we all miss the most is, you heard my sister say, I was in my 40s when I met my uncle for the first time, because of the family. When we found it, he found all of us. That all those years, we had all this family out there that we missed growing up with. We missed cousins. My aunt in Massachusetts has 3 children. The others had some kids. My Uncle Lou had 3 kids, plus Jeffrey, who we just met this morning. And we lost that time to be with family. And as you heard my sister say, because my dad was adopted and because of everything that went on and everything we know, family was the most important thing. And we didn't spend time with family. So I guess we're gonna make up for it now as much as we can, but at least we feel excited about it. And thank you for coming. My Uncle Lou was a very extraordinary man.
It is different.
Yeah. He every time I pick up a thing of scotch, he wasn't a wine drinker. So every time I pick up a scotch, I think of my Uncle Lou. My last statement is, I was down here at a conference. I was staying at Lowe's Van Daniken. He calls me. He says, I'm coming up. Come on up. We're sitting at the bar and he's ordering doubles. This is what I can remember of the night. At some point, we got in the car, his truck, and we drove for pizza, where we ordered more doubles and came back to Lowe's. And I said to him, Uncle Lou, don't drive. Stay with me in the hotel. And he says to me, it's all right, Harriet. I already called the cops. They know I've been drinking. They're going to make sure I get home okay. The one thing I can tell you about it was over $300. The bar tab. It's the thing, but we had a great time. That was my Uncle Lou. He was there for everyone. So.
We'd like to hear from some of you, and the first person I would like to speak is Jeffrey Sturgis, because I talked to his mother this morning, and Sandy was one of Lou and Sandra's best friends. And so Sandra wanted to be here. She's in Florida, and she got her times mixed up. She said, well, so then it's 2 o'clock my time. I said, no, honey, you're 3 hours ahead of us. Of course, Arizona messes everybody up, right?
Oh, yeah.
I said, okay, so she goes, oh, I said, send me something and I'll ask Jeffrey to read it, because Jeffrey considers Lou his uncle. And you have a gift of gab, so I don't need to say too much more to you. And so does your mom. She's funnier than hell, and I think he inherited some of that. So why don't you come up and tell everybody who you are? Huh?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. My name's Jeffrey Sturgis, and Lou has been a part of my life since the day I was born. There's a little bit of Lou in me, which led to tattoos on the forearm, smoking pot, and a very dry sense of humor on occasion. So my mother did send something for me to read, but I know the story by heart. I've heard it 50 times.
It happens when you're old.
Yeah, and there's a few hundred more. If you're interested, I'd be happy to share some of those with you. How fitting today is Peace Officers Memorial Day as well,
Wow.
as we gather. So it's nice that they both coincided. It's also Armed Forces Appreciation Day and Chocolate Dip Donut Day. Another day, right? So my mother had something specific she wanted me to say first to you and your daughter, Kathleen. Thank you very much for everything that you've done here today, and for you to open up your home to everybody. My mother did say, quote unquote, that Kathleen was one of the finest and nicest people that she has ever met. That was the first thing that she wanted to say. The second was that there's a short story of how their relationship began. So my mother went to Milton High School in Massachusetts. She met Lou in late 1959. And when they were seniors in 1960, my Uncle Lou and my mom were friends. Of course, Lou wasn't allowed over to my grandmother's house, hoodled and had a black leather jacket and rode a motorcycle. So he wasn't allowed over to the house. So my mother used to go out and meet him. And one day she had, Lou had said to her, I met a girl, you've got to meet her. And it turned out to be his wife, Sandra. And this is in 1960. So 6 or 8 months after that, they wanted to get married. They had all met at the Essex Deli in Boston on the corner of Washington and Essex Street. I don't know if it's still there or not, where my mother undertook her first foray into document forgery. And she used, at the time, I think it was called ink eradicator, but it was some form of chemical and an ink eraser, and forged Sandra's birth certificate to make her a year older so that Lou and Sandy could get married. The birth certificate was forged. They went in front of the Justice of the Peace in Brighton. His name was Emil Winkler. This is burned in my head. I've heard this so many times.
You need paper.
No. And Emil Winkler, the Justice of the Peace in Brighton, married Lou and Sandy in 1961. And it was right after that they went out for a celebration, and there were a few people there. Mikey Sinman, I don't know if Mike made it. I didn't see him. Oh, there you are. Hey, man.
Oh, he's still alive?
He's still alive. He's right back there. Yes.
Oh, God.
So also at, oh, wait a minute, I do have to refer to the paper for the place where the party took, where the party was.
That's funny.
Yeah, so let's see, hold on. It was, Jerome's Bar and Grill. You remember Jerome's Bar and Grill? It was you and Lefty Kravitz, my mother, Lou and Sandy, and that's where the party took place. So I came along 1963. Lou has always been a part of my life. They were Uncle Lou and Auntie Sandy since I learned how to talk. Our family spent a lot of time together. Actually, my mother would basically dump me off with Lou and go do her thing. So I would spend time with he, Sandy, and Lenore only at the time at the Cape. And I grew up with Lou all through grade school, junior high, and into high school. My mother did throw an 18th birthday party / going away party for me. I was signed up to go into the Marine Corps. My Uncle Lou shows up. There are about 50, 60 kids from my high school that were there. And Uncle Lou takes me into my bedroom. He says, "Come here, Jeffrey, I want to talk to you." So he calls me into the bedroom and he says to close the door. I close the door. He pulls out 2 big fat joints and says, "You and I smoke some pot." I said, I'm in my bedroom. I said, "I'm in the house, Uncle Lou." "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of your mother." So he proceeds, he gives me one, he fires it up. We're smoking the joints. I hear a faint knock on the door. My mother wasn't one to wait for a come in. She would knock and then just open the door. So she knocked and opened the door. She stuck her head in, smelled the pot. My room was full of smoke. She goes, "Louis, what the hell are you doing in here?" And he turned around and said, "Sandra, close the goddamn door. I'm smoking pot with Jeffrey." And my mother closed the door and was gonzo in about 2 seconds. Pretty much the only man that could ever make my mother do something like that. She has been married 3 times. So from my original father, my first stepdad, my second stepdad, who just passed away a year and a half ago, Lou is one of the only men on earth, matter of fact, the second man on earth who knew my real dad and both of my stepdads and cared enough to follow me through in all my stages of life. Our relationship over the last 10 years grew quite a bit. He told me stories with excitement in his eyes of the family that he had found when all that came to be. And I was in Phoenix and Tucson regularly for the last 25 years visiting him whenever I was here on business. He meant a lot to me. His family meant a lot to me. His love and respect meant a lot to me. He was the reason why I went into the military. One of the reasons why I'm also a Jew with tattoos. So we're gonna, the whole Jewish cemetery tattoo thing. We might have to skip over some of that so we can both get in. But there's hundreds of stories. The memories run deep, as does the influence that he had on my life. And I'm just grateful to be here with everybody that loves him. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Perfect. Is there an old friend in the back here? Where's Mike?
It's under the porch.
I know it's kind of shy. Can you raise your hand? I haven't met you yet. Do you have anything you'd like to say? No, okay, that's all right. That's all right.
Let me ask it online. Does anybody online want to say anything? Oh, no, I'm not muted, honey. They're muted. No, they're not muted. Are you guys muted?
Ruth
Okay,
wants to
sorry.
say something.
Ruthie wants to say
Okay, Ruthie, go ahead, sir.
Well, my brother and I had on again, off again relationship, but he was always there for me when I needed him. He was there for me 5 months ago today when my husband passed away. And if it wasn't for Lou to be there for me, to help me get through it, I don't know what I would have done. He helped me with my finances. He helped me with my husband's funeral arrangements, everything. And he was there, and he always said to me, "I'll always be there when you need me," and he was there when I needed him the most. And that's what I remember about him best right now.
Thank you, Ruthie. So anybody-
Okay, can I say something? I'm the other sister from Boston, or from Massachusetts anyway. I had met Louis when I was younger for a day, but we were never friends. Then when we got to know each other, and I was about 60 years old almost at the time. So I have had a few good times and quite a few that I don't quite remember, because I like to catch up with him and drink with him. And needless to say, trying to keep even with him when he's drinking. Except for Harriet, I don't know anyone else who can anywhere near catch up with him. Okay, and the best part was I have 3 children. My youngest son, well, the rest of my late husband and my other kids have dark hair and they're dark. I have the white skin, the blue eyes like Louis, and now the white hair. And my youngest son was born. The rest of us were chubby. Here was this skinny, tall kid that grew up, and everybody looked at him and kept saying, where did this kid come from? Where did this kid come from? Then I met Lou, and we found out he's tall and skinny, just like Louis was. So then we knew where this kid came from. Somewhere down there in the bloodstream, there was him. And he always looked up to his uncle with the tattoos and smoking and drinking. And he takes after his uncle. And we always said that. I'm sorry that we were supposed to all get together at the end of May with Louis coming out to Boston, but needless to say, he didn't. And I'm going to miss him, and I don't know what else. I'm just going to stop crying. Okay, I want to thank everybody for this wonderful, wonderful night or evening or whatever it is out there that you've all come to attend for my brother. Thank you all. And thank you all very much. And hopefully someday, maybe I'll get out to Arizona, or if you all come out this way to Massachusetts, just get your number and you're more than welcome to come visit. As I've always said, I have one twin bedroom available with a private bathroom for you. So anybody that wants to come visit, you're more than welcome. To say that you knew my brother. Thank you.
Who else on Zoom? See a few faces.
May have to- If you,
I
would-
do. I'm Eve. And
Okay.
I was Lou's next door neighbor. My husband and I moved in 10 years ago. And I just want to tell you about my last moments with Lou. I was leaving to come back to Illinois, and this great big guy moves over into the driveway and says, Camilla, I want to give you a hug. Puts his arms around me and says, you take good care of them too. You hear? Meaning my two dogs. And he looks at me with those beautiful eyes and he says, I just got to tell you one more time, thanks for your girlfriend. Thanks for Kathleen in my life. And those were the last words that Lou ever spoke to me. Thanks.
Let's see. I know there's some talkers in there. I can see you. Don't hide from me. Carol? You want to say something, Carol?
Gotta unmute myself. I actually read something yesterday, and when I was I thought about it in terms of my own life when I read it. And then when I was trying to go to sleep last night, I thought, you know, this really describes Lou and the kind of neighbor and friend he was. And this is from a book called Sabbatical Journey by Henri Nouwen. And it says, only one thing seems clear to me, every day should be well lived. What a simple truth, still it is worth my attention. Did I offer peace today? Did I bring a smile to someone's face? Did I say words of healing? Did I let go of my anger and resentment? Did I forgive? Did I love? These are the real questions. And I just want to say what a joy it was for me to know Lou the last few years. He was a great neighbor. He one of my last memories of him was I was on a Zoom thing and I saw him come over to the house and do some chores around my house, and I couldn't stop because I was on a Zoom doing a Zoom workshop. But I watched him spray my weeds and go fertilize my citrus trees, which he was very proud of. He told me he worked his ass off on that lemon tree, and I was going to have at least 300 lemons this year, and I think he's right. He did take great care of, I think, all of us who lived down on that end of the street. He was a great neighbor, a great friend. I don't think I'll ever look over at that house and not miss him. I'm in Kansas and I miss him. So it was a privilege to know him and I'm thankful.
Thank you, Carol. Anybody else on Zoom before we open it up to the group here?
Let me speak a little bit about Louis, who is my cousin, and my name is Mark Schwartz.
Hi, Mark.
I hail from Boston as well, and I am a part of his adoptive family. His adoptive parents, Uncle Ellie and Aunt Will, were my grandmother, my father's mother's sister and brother. I mean, Uncle Ellie was the brother, Aunt Will was his wife. Now, I go all the way back to 1958 when I was born, and I've known Lou that long. And I will tell you, my first memory of Lou was he had a dog named Pacey. Pacey was a collie. And if you all recall, back in those days, there was a fairly popular TV show for children called Lassie. And Pacey looked like Lassie. The difference was Lou had her so well trained, she was much smarter than Lassie. And I loved that dog. He gave me permission to call it my dog and treat her as my dog. And I was there in time to bury her. Lou was the beneficiary of the family that I knew. And I am just meeting all of you for the first time. And I am grateful for the kind of spirit that my family showed, because it is carried through to all of you. My family tended to adopt children rather than have children. A lot of them had medical issues of various kinds, and Lou was adopted. And I'm going to tell you a funny story in a moment, but suffice it to say that adoptive parents don't just have a child, they choose the child and the child chooses them. And so the adoptive family is important. The natural biological family is important. And when you get to meet one another, the love, the extended family is just a miracle of beautiful relationships. Now, I promised a little bit of a funny story, so let me tell you that funny story. Lou was known as Little Louis in my family. Why? Well, there was another Louis Sacklad who was about 2 years older, happened to be fairly tall, but he came 2 years before. Now, when I met Little Louis, I was all of about 3 feet, maybe 3'1". You know, I was a little toddler. And I was introduced to Little Louis, and it took me about a half an hour to look all the way up to the top where his head might have been. And so thinking of him as Little Louis was kind of silly, but it was part of what made him wonderful. He was a giant. He was a gentle giant. He was a loving giant. And we heard all the stories about his exploits as a Glendale police officer, as a DPS patrolman, and later did work with the Federal Marshal Service. My father was a physical therapist at the VA hospital, and he was the first to greet Lou when he came out of the service Lou had very serious back problems coming out of the service. They were serious injuries, maybe even life-threatening surgeries. And my father took care of him, took him under his wing. And so Louis became a very important part of my family. And later on, my mother and Louis were very close. It was a kind of interesting relationship. I would almost say that my mother was closer to Lou than my father was. And that's because of the nature of who my mother was. She took ill with cancer and died at 46. God bless Lou. He was already living in Arizona then. We were living in Boston then. I live in Phoenix as it happens now. But Louis made sure that he was back east before she went, because he meant that much to her. And I've stayed in touch with Lou all these years. You know, Lou had a very important job in our family, and in fact, in the lives of many families, he was in charge of the Jewish Cemetery Association, where everybody was buried. He went often to visit graves and to go walk through the cemetery, just checking on the headstones. And why did he do that? Well, the Jewish cemetery in that part of Boston, a lot of them were subject to anti-Semitic graffiti and attacks. And once you know, Lou would come in there and scrub those stones till all the graffiti was left over, picked up the stones that were toppled, laid fresh flowers, and made sure that loved ones were loved. I've stayed in touch with Lou all these many years later. And Sandra and Lou, who I've known my whole life, I knew them when they lived in Nantasket Beach. I knew them when they lived in Tucson. They always made a point to stop in Phoenix on their way to Washington State or wherever they were traveling, always in a big hurry because he hated the heat of summer down in Tucson. But we stayed in touch all these years. And when Sandra got sick, and it was sad, but there was Lou making sure he visited her often, let her know, even though she didn't necessarily know, he let her know that he still loved her and he was there till the end for her. And seeing all of you and the kind of love you are showing for him tells me that my experience, my love for my cousin was something that wasn't unique to me. He was universally loved and he loved universally. And I wanted to thank Kathleen and Megan and everybody who invited me here today so that I too could say goodbye to my beloved cousin. He was a very important part in my life all through it. Thank you for listening.
Anybody else on Zoom? No? How about here?
You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, this is who's it from?
It's Lynn.
Oh, Lynn?
Hold on, Lynn. I'll try to unmute you. No. Yeah.
This is my job. I can do
Right
it.
here.
No, you just go over to her name.
Oh, I saw it. It flashed up on mute when you.
Where's
got our
my-
picture.
Why? Because I'm upside down, so I
One
can't do it.
minute.
You can't
I got
do
it.
this?
I
No, I
got
was
it.
just
Yeah, it's
upside
right
down.
here.
Oh, so I couldn't do it.
There we go. Ah, I'm done. First of all, I just want to tell you guys, lose multiple families friends, loved ones. It's such a privilege to be with you. We only got to know Lou once. He came to visit with Kathy. Kathy's been a friend of mine for years and years and years. So when she said there's this special friend I want to bring, we expected him to be special, but we didn't expect him to be a giant. And calling him Little Lou would have been out of the question. But he was dear and sweet. He shares a very important characteristic with my husband, a huge heart. And it walks in the door with him, it stays with him, and it stays with you even when he's gone. And that's the part I'm going to treasure, is that Lou's heart will be with us always. And I know he will be with Kathy. And it was a very respectful thing that he did for his wife, that he cared for her and that he looked after her, and that he made sure that her last days were as comfortable as they could possibly be. That kind of loyalty and love is pretty rare. And I know that that's the kind of loyalty and love that Kathy showed him those last few days in the hospital. It is absolutely unthinkable to us, my husband and I, that he is gone. They were planning a trip here when he was out of the hospital and felt better. And I'm so sorry that he won't be here. I'm glad I stuffed him with beef ribs while he was here the first time. And he is a special soul that the world is not better off for having lost. And we miss him and we love him and we thank you for making us part of today.
Thank you, Lynn. Lynn and Dick live in Albuquerque.
Anyone else on Zoom want to say something?
Okay, how about people here? Yeah, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a friend of Kathleen's, and the first time I heard about Lou was that he was this big, tall, scary guy with guns and police cars. And Kathleen picked me out for dinner, and I said, "Do it. It's a free meal. Why not?" So she goes out to dinner. The next time she calls, she says, "Now he wants to kiss me." I said, "Why not? Go for it." So, and the rest is history. So I did get to meet many times, and he is all that you all have said. And I'm sorry I didn't get to be with him more.
This is my sister Beth. Yeah, I'm Kathy's sister and Julie's sister, and Lou's friend also. My partner Paul is there somewhere. He may say something or not, but he and Lou became really close because Paul and I have a home out near Joshua Tree, and Kathy and Lou came to visit us a couple of times. And of course, as soon as I found out that he was married, what else can I say? He was very happy to do it, and we were able to spend time together there. And I love all the stories, and I really appreciate the fact how much he loved Kathy. I say he loved Kathy to the moon, the stars, around and around and back and forth, and planets and all sorts of things like that. But I loved also hearing all of these beautiful stories of the family and how much he did love everyone that he met, as you all know. And I think he spent so much beautiful time with you. Yeah. This boyfriend's also Jewish. He's what do you call him? Hey, Paul. You're not gonna say anything.
If you want, I will. My story is of recent, Lou, because we did spend in the last 2 years 2 weekends together out in California. And because my partner Beth and Lou's partner Kathy are sisters, he came into the house, but the last thing I expected was that he declared that we were mishpucha. And when I saw this giant guy come in and explained that his life as a Jew, as an adopted Jew, and we're in California being connected by these two Irish gals. It was just beyond comprehension until I got more and more into his story. And the fact that we were mishpucha all the times in our lives before we met kind of backfilled with his love and his presence and his story. And I know every single person that's either on screen or in present with Kathy right now knows that his life has just enriched us all. So I'm just so lucky that I knew him. And that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Paul.
I'd like to say a word about Angels on Earth. My name is Bruce Hallowell. I'm Susie's husband. We've been family of choice with Kathy and her loved ones since Farmington.
Yes.
And it's been wonderful for us. About Angels on Earth. Some years ago, I was fortunate enough to meet this gruff man who was in construction. His name was Jim Butler. And you had to know him to know that he was an angel on earth. He was this big, imposing, gruff guy. But he started schools, he fed the poor, he took care of immigrants. Everything that came in front of him, he did something about. He did the right thing. And he was an angel on earth. And he showed me that angels aren't in gossamer gowns and wings necessarily. They can be Lou. This guy. Who would guess that this guy's an angel on earth? This brash, gruff, imposing character. And yet he did 100% the right thing by everybody he touched. He was taking care of his wife. He was giving Kathy the love that a love like she'd never had. Was able to fully love Kathy, fully love his wife in her situation, and do right for her 100%. You knew every single thing he could do for her, he did, and he was doing it gladly. And yet here he's doing this for you, and this for you, and this for you, and he's giving, and he's 100% there for Kathy, and yet he's being this compassionate, huge spirit. So that's my word about angels on earth. They don't necessarily look like you think they might want to. And Lou was just an absolute angel. What a delightful man. We are all blessed to have known him. He touched us all in his own special Lou way. So,
As my kids would always say, oh, Lou.
oh, Lou.
Anybody else? Awesome. Our neighbor. You may not want me to talk. Yeah, well, you will.
My name is Cindy. I live right down the street from Kathleen and Lou. First time I met Lou, probably about 11 years ago, he yelled at me and said, "Get those goddamn dogs off my grass." Well, Lou had this prized grass. He loved his grass and he didn't want any dogs peeing on it. And I said, "Well, isn't that what the grass is for?" "Nope, let him pee somewhere else." So after that, I thought, oh man, I don't want anything to do with this guy. And then he would say hi to me and stuff. And I met Sandra, and they had gotten a dog. And I kept thinking, I wonder if that dog's going to pee on that grass. I hope it does. Anyway, so we got to know each other, and he couldn't remember my name. He was always saying to Kathleen, "What's her name? That redheaded girl, what's her name?" And pretty soon he remembered my name. And then he got to where the dogs would come up and he would say, "All right, come on over here." They'd run up the ramp, and then he started giving them treats. He didn't care then if they peed on his grass, but he gave them treats all the time. But the story I want to tell is about when Lou came to me 2.5 years ago, and he said to me, "Cindy, come up here on the deck. I need to talk to you." So here goes me with my 2 labs and up on the deck, and he said, "How well do you know that lady down there?" I said, "What lady?" He said, "Kathleen." I said, "Well, I know her pretty well. Why? You think she'd go out with me?" I said, "I don't know, Lou. What do you want to do?" "Well, I don't know. I kind of want to take her to dinner." I said, "Well, why don't you just take her for coffee or for lunch, something real casual, just meet?" And he said, "Do you think she'll go?" And I said, "I don't know, Lou. Go ask her. I don't know." So long story short, he asked her, he came, and the next day I was walking the dogs and he said, Cindy, guess what? We went out. He was so excited. Then Kathleen says to me, you think I should go out with him? So here I felt like the matchmaker in between. I said, same thing. Kathleen, what do you have to lose? Go out with him. Well, yeah, but we're neighbors. And I said, well, you know, see what happens. And the rest is history. And I'm glad that you had the 2.5 years that you had.
Thank you. Your fault. It's my fault. Well, Rebecca thinks it's hers, but, you know.
Okay, well, he asked me first.
I'm gonna go on with,
Teamwork.
my story is very similar to hers. When I
Come up here,
first,
pretty.
okay,
I know.
Okay.
It's cameras.
I've known Lou for about 11 years and I first met him with Sandra and I'm Lou's favorite waitress at his favorite restaurant. And he came in and him and Sandra were eating at the counter.
Joe's Pancake House.
And now they both had that long white hair. They were eating and then this girl came up and she sat down next to Lou. And my boss says, she's a prostitute. We can't have that in here. You need to go do something. And we were like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Lou gets up, pulls out his wallet, throws it down on the counter, out pops his badge. That girl took off out the door and she ran away and we never saw her again. But I kept seeing Lou over and over. He kept coming back. And even after Sandra had to be put into the nursing home, he was telling me he was so lonely. He would take Ruthie out dancing and he just couldn't find the right woman. And he would tell me, oh, all those ladies that walk their dogs by my house, they're so snooty and this and that. And then he goes, but there's this one lady, she's special. She's different from everybody else. And I said, you need to ask her out. Yeah, yeah. And I met Kathleen and they were meant to be together, just too short of a time. Lou was an awesome, big personality of a man. Very wonderful.
Looking around. Let's see. Gotta raise your hand if you want to say something. Jamesy. I thought you might say something. This is my grandson, James.
So,
Megan.
I remember like the first time that like the grandma told me about Lou, she was like, don't let Angel get on that lawn. He will yell at you. And then like a few weeks later I was like, so you want me not to have Angel get on the lawn? And she was like, no, it's fine. And like that's when they started like seeing each other and like now I'm always like, and we always thought that Lou was a mean man who would yell at us.
But he didn't, huh?
Yeah.
And he always was giving you something, wasn't he? Yeah. Thank you, honey. Anybody else? Yes. Cindy and I went to graduate school together, so thank you a long time.
Kathy is the big sister I never had. I'm the oldest of two. And Kathy has been my big sister for, what was he, 35? So for 35 years. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with Lou, but every moment was precious. And what I'm most grateful for is the joy that she brought into your life. I have never seen, I've known Kathy for 35, 36 years. I've never seen her happier than she was in the last 2.5 years. And for that, I will always be grateful. We brought a great deal of joy into our lives in the few times, the few moments that we got to spend together. I will never look at our front doors again without hearing you say, those doors. Leah made those doors. I'm very grateful that you brought it.
Yeah, Joan. This is Joan. Come up here. It's easier for these people to see you then. They can't see you on the thing. I know. Kathleen, don't do that.
Well, before you moved into 11th Street, and I was on Lower, Cindy and Bruce, and the personality, Lou, and even Sandra, before she went into the home, we would trade dishes, and sometimes Sandra would come over, know, and would sit in the porch and so forth. But I never heard, you know, how does a guy from Boston know anything about horticulture? Or, you know, an arborist or anything, yeah, you know? And I never heard of blood red oranges until Lou told me about it. So I had to buy a tree, and you know, he was instructing me all along the Meyer lemons, you know, so all of this was planted in the backyard, and he tutored me in the maintenance and the feeding and the cultivation of this. And I think of those, I no longer live at that house, but I think these trees are memorial to, you know, his love to the universe, and they keep giving. And I remember that he would always have a productive orange tree.
Yeah.
You know, and he would gather bushels and bushels of oranges and share them with the, I think it was the diocese.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and just a generous man. Whenever I needed a little bit of an input, I like to do things around the house myself, but you know, I checked with him to get his input. And he says, and if you ever need a tool, and he showed me his tool shop, and he says, you just come and help yourself anytime. I'm gonna leave it unlocked. Just open-hearted, generous, and God, he kept that Toyota Tacoma immaculate. I mean, he could just virtually take a Q-tip and clean it, you know, it was just, I miss him. He almost like my older brother, you know, so thank you for having this.
I'm doing this for you.
You are? Okay.
Says she's shy, but.
Yeah, I don't like being up front of people, but, and I didn't get to know Lou very much. I met him once. The first time I went to meet him, I got sick, and so we couldn't go to dinner.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I couldn't wait to see him again. And then after COVID lightened up again, I was able to meet him. But through Kathy, I knew that he was really special because how I could feel his love through her that he had given you. And so I wrote a poem. This is your card. I just opened it instead of, so, I had written this poem because I had written this card, and then I went, it's kind of a poem. But I said, Lou was a gift to you. This is for you. And you a gift to him. He passed through your life so quickly, yet has left a lifelong impact. I love what he gave you with his love, and I love what he left you, true memories of love. And as a friend witnessing, I am blessed. Love, Kathy. I love you, Kathy. And then I just said that to you.
Anyone else have a burning desire? Maybe a few of you might need a drink before you want to talk. Yeah, just want to say something. You can. No?
We can always have some the scotch and then revisit.
Or the Guinness, or.
Yeah.
You want to say something? Yeah.
When I first came, I moved here a couple of years ago, and actually, it was kind of bittersweet because I'd always had Kathleen to myself, and then she fell in love with this man, and I was a wreck at that time when I moved down here, and I don't know, we kind of got off to a rocky start, Lou and I. He was not in agreement with what I was doing, and I was a wreck, and so what happened over the years is he actually took me under his wing, as so many of you have said he does. And I think he knew how much I love Kathleen and how incredibly close we are. And so he was always making sure that I was okay. Every time I'd come to dinner, he'd say, when are you going to move here?
Well, no, you gotta spend the night. You gotta stay over here. What are you doing way over there on the west side or whatever? And I just feel like I actually, being on my own, I was feeling like I could actually had somebody to depend on, a male, you know, because he was always saying, you got to buy this mattress, you got to go here and get that thing. And yeah, so I think I was very blessed to be with you during these last 2 years. Because it was, yeah, it was a very special time for you. And I'm grateful to Lou and to you that I got to experience it. It's 16. So if there isn't anybody right now, we're gonna have dinner. Okay, and we'll put the chairs around the tables, and I see the wind's been blowing a lot, right? But Megan made a bunch of frames of pictures, some that I had, some that we had. And so they'll be on your table. And if there's a picture on your table that you'd like to have, just let us know. Okay, we're done. Somebody asked about that.
Just take it.
Just take it, yeah, because we got them, all right? We're trying to decide what to do, you know, for dinner. And we have the Italian part, right? Which, by the way, 2 Christmases ago, I thought, well, Lou's been adopted, you know, I got all these stories. Let's get his DNA done. So we did the whole, you know, 23andMe thing. And he calls me, this is shit. I said, what do you mean it's shit? I can't open it. I don't know what it is. So I open it up, right? And I'm going, oh my God. There wasn't any Irish, according to his DNA. There was Italian, which Harry had always told him. And he didn't like pasta. So it's like, okay. But whether he was Irish in his DNA, he was really Irish in his heart. And after this whole thing was over, one of the reasons that he had the surgery was it was successful. And we were going to go to Ireland after we took Sandra back to Boston. So if you hear some music that's coming through tonight, it's because that's his Irish side. I don't think we're playing any Italian. I think we have a little bit of Jewish music coming.
No opera.
No, well, he didn't like opera anyway. And it was too highbrow. And I want to say something because I keep hearing you guys talk about his drink. He did like to smoke his pot, and when he was having this thing that we're looking at, I said, honey, just stop it. Because, you know, come on, look what's happening. And then I think he would sneak once in a while when I wasn't around. I'm sure he did. But Lou was kind of funny because he would tell all his doctors that he didn't drink. And I'm hearing you all talk. And he did. But when he drank, it was Lou. You know, this big guy. But then he might go, you know, 3-4 weeks and not have a drink. He'd make me a drink if I wanted, but he there was just something about him, and I'm so grateful the way you guys, but everything you guys have said, because I felt so loved and cherished by him. I'm gonna really miss him, and I got to be with him, as Megan said, those last hours. And the last thing I said to him was, honey, Sandra's here. I could feel her, and I'm gonna let go of your hand because she's gonna take your hand. And that meant a lot to me to be able to say that to him. It was too short, and I know that Lou was fine with everything. Everything was done with him. And he said, you know, well, if something happens, you know, just know I've had a great life, and I wanted more time with you when it came out of the first surgery. The nurse that was in there who I met that morning, she came out, you're Kathleen, aren't you? I said, I was gonna tell you something. He woke up from the surgery and he's telling everybody how much he loves you and he wants 5% for years. That was sort of his line. And so I'm going to cherish everything you said, and we still want to hear more stories and things. And thanks for coming. Now we have, okay, for dinner, we have corned beef cabbage. Okay. We have a savory kugel. That's the Jewish side. We have salad and veggies, right? And I asked Harriet, well, what should we do for the Jewish side? And she said, all Jews like chicken. Okay. All right. And I wanted to do a roast chicken because, you know, then you're dealing with that. But Lou really liked the thighs, because if I would serve him, you know, the white meat, he'd go, what's this? anyway, it's a chicken in an apricot fig sauce. And like I said, we'd like you to get up so that we can move the chairs around the tables. And as you're having, the bar will be open. Most of the liquor I brought was at Lou's house that the cops can bring. So drink it, please.
Yeah, help yourself to the everything. Oh yeah, but they're packed. Oh.
Yes. Okay, well, let's get these chairs out of the way. Thank you all for joining so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan.
Sorry, that was like not the view I wanted to give you.
Well, that's Megan. There's
Bye,
Sandy.
thank you.
Oh, Sandy.
Thank you.
That's Sandy Pomerantz. We're breaking for dinner now. Can you hear me? And Jeffrey got up and said your piece. Sandy Pomerantz and then Sandy's sister, but Sandy Pomerantz is one of the oldest friends. Oh, okay.
Looking back on the memory of
All right, that's just fine. You can kiss John too. Yeah, right, buddy, kiss John. Yeah. Oh, my back is terrible.
Do you know, I've never heard anybody go on this. I said Kathy once and said, Tony, her name.
Well, all my friends, those people that talk.
Yeah. Well, see, I want to get
My family.
Well, hi. I'm so glad to see you.
Yeah, we flew down yesterday.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we went back, Monday morning. We have lots of food, guys, so.
This is from Lois. Yeah. So she said just walk around and do sleep.
And I got you.
So you guys flew down? I remember you did, yeah. She needs to get
No, it's not here. These are pictures that I sent them. Okay. So I've never seen it. Well, that one was a gift. Yeah.
Oh, I heard that. It's almost here. We have a little tiny bit of snow. A little bit. Really? And we have had one 5 inches, 5 inches. Oh, yes. And what are the wildfires? Oh, I know. That's it. You know what they're doing in Spokane? They have a guy who has 200 goats and he's trying to move.
Oh, so they're just eating everything.
They're trying to eat all the underground. Yeah, that's a great idea. He's gonna start next time. I think it's, you know what, it's his way of saying you should have moved. That's what, you know.
We actually have. I get like.
You never told me.
Yeah, Decker. Yep. Decker. Yeah. Yeah. He was not happy that, I know that. I know. Yeah. Oh, you know, all right.
Yes, yes, it did.
So when you was brought in to see Joe, that was, what, 10 years?
Good to see you, yeah.
Yeah, and she's, yeah, she'll be dating.
You know where I live. Yeah. Yeah, because I said I didn't know.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes, yes, you did.
Yeah, and I used to go in there with Sunny all the time. All the time.
I did, where are you guys, even met
Yeah,
Lou
I
or
saw
something,
that.
yeah.
And then when they found out who was my.
Yes, he kept saying, you know, my sister worked with you. And I'm like, no. And
They
then
didn't know me by name, they just knew me by walking in.
pictures up and stuff, and I would love to see your book. Can we keep that on it?
There's two of them. There's a original and a copy.
I made the original for my
father and then I made a copy.
Oh, okay.
You told me about it.
Will you guys, will you help Craig move the altar over to the picture over there?
You think these things work? These are all shoulder.
I remember like you said, well, I mean, I forget.
Yeah,
I mean, just, you want
every
to get
Friday
out
night.
and,
So, well, we
Let's put it over there.
Let's put it all on the altar table.
When do you got that?
Right here.
they just took that.
Yeah.
And so
I
let's,
think
let's,
they're
let's
gonna take all of this stuff.
Yes,
and put
it is, it is. And you know, when it's your time, it's your time. So it wasn't gonna be the cancer, but it was a different.
So Craig, do you want this stuff over there?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh, it's been 4 or 5 years ago.
Away, yeah. New York.
No. Yes, we saw the pictures of it, yeah. I know he was behind Lou and Sandra kind of kept her eye on it.
Uh-huh. So we're gonna have breakfast with him. All righty.
I have to talk to her before.
Everybody?
I'm having a scotch with and for my uncle.
Well, that would be nice.
Thank you for my uncle.
So you're, Lou was your uncle.
Yeah, my father was his brother.
And that's your,
That's Nancy's. Ruthie, Sandy's and Aunt, my other uncle. My sister Bonnie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will land like a trumpet on the ear, as if to say, here lives a wealthy man. If I were a rich man, all day long I'd biddy biddy bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a bitty bitty rich, I see my wife, my golden, looking like a rich man's wife with a proper double chin, supervising meals to her heart's delight. I see her putting on airs and strutting like a peacock. Aye, what a happy mood she's in. Screaming at the servants day and night. The most important men in town